Now, the meeting of the September 12th WVU Faculty Senate will come to order. We do have a quorum. The minutes for the May 9th meeting were distributed with the agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the minutes? All right, hearing none, the minutes are approved as written and will be posted on the Faculty Senate website. Our first item of business is typically President Gee, who hasn't arrived yet. So we'll jump ahead and ask the Provost to give her report. Mary Ann.
Thank you, Scott, and good afternoon, everyone. It is so wonderful to see you. It's amazing, right? This is our third year, right? In 3 years, it's our first in-person meeting with everyone here. So it is just wonderful to see you. I hope you all had a good summer and you're having a good start to the new academic year. So I just want to say also that it is a real pleasure to begin my remarks not having to discuss the university's COVID-19 protocols. Truly, truly wonderful. And I don't have to tell you, but our students seem very excited to be back, very enthusiastic to be back in full, to start the new year with hope in their heart and an enthusiasm for being back together. I'm very happy to report that we have had a strong start to the fall semester. Our first-time freshman enrollment is up from last year. We welcomed a new class of just over 4,600 students. More than 58% of these freshmen are non-resident students. This is our largest non-resident class to date, which shows that we are very much becoming a regional institution. But it also reflects the continued decline in high school enrollments in West Virginia, as well as the continued decline in college participation. We have one of the lowest in the rates. And it's something that many people in the state, including our university, are working to address. The average GPA of our incoming freshman class is 3.7, and approximately 920 of these freshmen are enrolled in our honors program. So that's the good news. The less good news is that our preliminary numbers indicate that we had a decline in retention and persistence rates, really our first significant decline in several years. We were on an upward trajectory and then COVID hit. There are probably a number of reasons for this. This is certainly a nationwide trend post-COVID. I'm sure you've heard about the great college dropout, with more than 1 million students failing to return to college nationwide this fall. We know, and many of you know, that many of our freshmen came to college last year following nearly 2 years of being online in high school. And they probably, some of them were not as prepared as they were in the past. We also know that mental health issues were significant for these students. And we know that COVID financial aid that had been available to them has come to an end. So it really was a perfect storm. We're hoping that this decline in student success rates is a COVID blip, but I will say it reinforces our need as a university to drill down even deeper into our student success efforts. We must work diligently and together to ensure that the students we accept to WVU can be successful and can move through their degree programs in a timely manner. Student success continues to be a cornerstone to our academic transformation agenda. So I just want to share a few of the initiatives that we are engaged in this fall. And some of these are being led by the Provost office, and some of them are being led by some of our academic units. So you may have noticed we launched our Ask Morgan bot 2 weeks ago, and this is a 24-hour bot that answers students' questions automatically. It has a pretty large bank of questions already in the app, and with the AI, it continually adds new questions. Students really like engaging with this because they can ask their questions 24/7. They can ask them anonymously, and it certainly saves our advisors time to focus on, I would say, more intensive, more important issues. But also the bot will direct students to human beings if the student asks for help or their questions aren't being answered through the bot. Already in the first week, we had 3,000 hits, and we expect that popularity of Morgan will continue to grow. We're continuing to work on strengthening our academic advising for undergraduates. This summer, we hired Joy Carr as our Director of University Advising. That's the first time we've had that position. Joy came to us with extensive experience from the Eberly College. She's hit the ground running, and she will be announcing several initiatives designed to support and strengthen advising across the units. Our colleges, several colleges have hired or are hiring additional full-time professional advisors who can handle some of those very complicated issues, including financial aid issues, compliance issues, and the like. So Statler, Davis, Creative Arts, and Eberly have hired more professional advisors. And by the time all these advisors are hired and trained, 80% of our students will have access to a full-time professional advisor, freeing up our faculty to do mentoring and career counseling and those things that our faculty are very adept at doing. We are working with the Eberly College to create a STEM foundational collaborative that will be focused on improving student success in those foundational STEM courses, particularly math, chemistry to some degree, but really math. When students don't succeed in these courses, they have a much higher chance of not being retained at the university. And so we want to put some energy and focus into figuring out what we need to do to ensure those students can be successful in those courses. And it may require some additional resources. We are really trying now to target our approach, to take a more focused approach and look at those areas or populations of students that are most vulnerable. So, for example, we know that first generation students and Pell eligible students retain at a significantly lower rate than the average WVU student. So we are looking to expand something like our TRIO program, which is a federally funded program that has tremendous success rates and that provides wraparound support for about 200 students. But we want to increase that because we do continue to have this group of students that we believe can be successful, but come to us already with a number of challenges. And then our office has created, in conjunction with several other units across campus, a student success SWAT, which is a group that is meeting every other week to address the pressing issue of student retention. And it includes representatives from academic affairs, student life, because it's not just an academic issue, right? Financial aid and other units. And I know that Evan Witters, who's leading our student success efforts, is working with multiple faculty committees on addressing various aspects of student retention. So I just want to say, you know, in addition to being a moral obligation, there is a financial imperative to improving our student success rates. The results of this year's decline in retention and persistence will likely mean a financial loss to the institution and a budget gap that we will need to address. We don't think it's a significant budget gap, but it's enough that there may be a little bit of belt tightening this year, further, I should say. So remember, you know, this is why it's even more of an imperative. We are also facing what the EAB refers to as the demographic cliff in high school enrollments by 2025. So that retaining the students we have really does have to be a top institutional priority. And while there will be some centrally directed efforts, you know, I don't want to sound like a lecturer, but retention is everybody's problem. It's everybody's opportunity. Each of us has an obligation to do everything that we can do to help our students be successful, even if they come to us less prepared. You know, it's not necessarily their fault, right? We have to take the students we have and work with them so they can be successful in college and ultimately be successful young adults. Student success is a top priority under the banner of academic transformation. I'm very briefly going to mention some of our other fall 2022 academic transformation priorities. We are going to be working on not only identifying, but investing in programs of opportunity that were identified through our program portfolio review process. We really did look at programs where we thought either current programs or programs that are new to the university or that would be new that would generate significant student enrollment and interest. Some of those will likely be coming through Faculty Senate this fall. We, along those lines, we are working to create an academic innovation hub or center. This would be a very small unit housed in the provost office that would be tasked with helping faculty and academic leaders identify, new programs, again, that are unique to the university or that could be differentiator, but also really clearing the way for interdisciplinary collaboration. Because right now we know there are many barriers to doing that. And so we want to be a place where we can help eliminate those barriers and encourage and incentivize really interesting and relevant academic programming. We plan to expand our online programs portfolio, really focusing on adult learners and on continuing education to help people, gear up or transition to new jobs. But there is a demand for that in the field, and we have room to grow in terms of our online. We have less than 2,500 students that are fully online at WVU. That is somewhat less than our peers. And so again, we think this is an audience that we can grow. We're going to focus on really beefing up our transfer recruitment efforts. Again, we have room to grow in that area. We really want to focus on 2+2 partnerships with our community and technical colleges. And we have some expertise now that can help us do that, including Chris Gilmer, who is the interim president at Potomac State and has tremendous experience with two-year colleges and a lot of ideas on how we can grow those partnerships. And then we, continue to work on, while growing, because we know we want to grow, we do have to continue to focus on reducing costs. So we will continue to focus on looking for academic efficiencies. One of those things that we focused on last spring was on graduate tuition waivers and looking at, is there a way that we can reduce our reliance on waivers in some cases, some types of graduate student waivers, limiting perhaps the number of years that students could be on waivers. This is a hidden cost to the university. We invest, if you think about it, about $45 million a year in tuition waivers. I will tell you, we had planned to develop a policy that we would roll out and get feedback on, but the new budget model that we are going to be approaching has put things on hold because the new budget model will likely not only return tuition to the colleges, but also the costs associated with the students, including tuition waivers. So we really want to see where that budget model falls out. That's another big area that you're going to be hearing a lot about this year is the new budget model. That is a university-wide effort, not something that is simply being led by academic affairs, but it does change certain things. So you'll hear more about the waiver issue, but we're putting that temporarily on hold. And then last but not least, faculty rewards and recognition. That continues to be one of our priorities under academic transformation. There are a number of initiatives that will be, you'll hear about this fall. The faculty workload plans now, our office is looking at college level workload plans, and then it will go down to the department level. Again, the goal is to have a consistent way that faculty assignments are given throughout campus, knowing that every unit is different, but we want some consistency and transparency in how we do that. The big thing this fall will likely be proposed revisions to the university promotion and tenure document. And Melissa Latimer and Chris Staples I have been leading that effort in our office, but there was a committee that was very engaged for the past, year and a half on this. And so there is a draft document that is being shared, at least parts of it, in a number of town hall meetings that are being scheduled at the colleges. I think Eberly will have 3, but some colleges will have 1, and they're coming to share what the changes would be in the document, to get feedback on that. And then once all those town meetings are held, we will share the document university-wide, and it will be available, including all the changes and notes about the changes that were made and why they were made. And then, of course, it will go to the faculty senate this fall. So that's really, a big thing happening. And really what I can say in general about that document is that it expands the definition of what counts for teaching, research, and service. It's more expansive, and it recognizes all kinds of, for example, research that we might not have in the past, including if you write for the conversation, write public scholarship, community engaged scholarship, and so forth. It also has some accountability measures in it that are new, and makes transparent accountability measures that are already in place. So stay tuned for that. And if there is a town meeting in your college and you have any curiosity about this, which I assume you would, I would encourage you all to attend. And then last but not least, I just want to share, our office made a number of new hires this summer. That people that you may interact with, including, as I mentioned, Joy Carr, our new director of advising, Tracy Morris, who had been the dean of the College of Education and what was it now? Human Services. Thank you. We've had some changes. And Tracy is now she's now our CB Wilson. She is now the Associate Provost of Academic Personnel. And has brought a number of great ideas to our office. Paul Headings is our new Director of Academic Integrity, and I hope he'll give a presentation to you all this fall. Chris Schimmel, of course, you will hear more from her. She is our new faculty ombudsman. Comes to us from the new CAHS College. And of course, our new dean of that college, Dr. Autumn C. Prey, is here with us today. We're very excited to have her here. And then we're fully into our search for the new president of Wvu Tech. And I think at this point, the committee is interviewing a lot of folks in that first round. And then we hope to have a decision made by mid-fall to late fall, because Carolyn Long will be stepping down at the end of the year. And that's a lot. So I hadn't seen you in a while. And that's my report.
Are there any questions for the provost? If so, please step up to one of the microphones. Like, no, thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary Ann. You're next. So our next report is from President Gordon.
Yeah, you're protecting my flank. Let me just tell you something. She gave every damn thing I was going to say. I'm sitting here taking notes, and I want you to know, that is a serious problem. Just kidding. Just kidding. I know, I apologize for being late, but I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, you've heard that we are very focused on the success of our students and the success of each other. And I think that that's important. It's not simply about, it's about the health of our community. When we talk about healthy minds, it's about all of us. As you know, burnout and the great dropout is affected academic life as much as any part of our economy, any part of our culture. And in fact, now they have a new term called the great sleep out, which means that people are just doing what they want to do, but not adding on to any additional or adding any additional responsibility. It's a strange time that we're living in. There's just no doubt about it. But recruitment, retention. So the thing that's interesting to me is the fact that actually on the recruitment side, we did well. We met our goals and in fact exceeded our goals. It's the issue of retention that is bothering me very much. And we can blame it on a number of factors. We can blame it on COVID. We can blame it on the nature of the moment, a variety of other things. I do think that we need to understand that higher education itself has a considerable challenge. I've shared with you that when I became a university president 42 years ago, 95% of the American public thought higher education was good. Now it's below 50%. That in and of itself is very difficult to sustain. The second thing is that as part of that is that we need to understand that many people are now questioning whether higher education is worthy of their time and their talent and their energy. So there is no longer the immediate need in many people's minds to go on for higher education. Now, our position and my personal position is the fact that everyone needs to have additional education. We need to have skills training. We need to have people who are going into the labor union, into other forces. We need to have everything we possibly can. But in today's world, there is no doubt about the fact that we need to continue our education. Some people should never come to our university. Others who come here and need to have a lot of help. It's just the nature of the fact that for 2 years they have had masks, they've had a variety of impediments. They have not had the kind of educational experience they should have. And obviously, the mental health problems are just dramatic. Again, I'll give you the figure. 12 years ago now, college-age students felt about 5 to 10% of them had mental health challenges. Now it's 75%. All of that means to say that we're in a very interesting time. Is our university going to be fine? Absolutely. Is our university going to thrive? Only if we do the things we're talking about. And thriving is what we're about. You know, there are a number of smaller institutions that will not survive. And that to me is very unhappy, because I think that one of the great strengths of American higher education is our diversity, small and large, and Mormon and Catholic and public and private. I think that all of those are components of what makes us a great educational country. The other thing, of course, is the fact that education itself is going to become increasingly important. We've moved from a hardware to a thoughtware society. Strange to me that our recognition from 95 to below 50%. At the same time, higher education has been the most important component of our economic opportunities, our economic resurgence, if you will. And even more so because the fact that the Chinese are creating one university about every week. There are 1.4 billion Chinese, or 1.4 billion Indians. On the basis of mass, we lose. On the basis of thinking, that's the only competitive advantage we can have and that we must have, because there are only 330 million of us. And so, and it's not about competition, it's about collaboration. So I do think that, and the provost, I'm certain, talked about this, and I apologize for running a minute or two late, but we do need to make certain that we continue to widen our circle. I see Amber right here. Our international students, we've lost about 1,000 or more of our international students. They've been an important component of who we are as an institution. Not simply because we have international students, but because the fact that they provide the kind of grit and determination and conversation that we want to have, particularly students coming from rural areas in West Virginia, to be exposed. To have a roommate from Beirut or from Hanover is something that we value, and something that they should value, something they should recognize. So the issue I think that we face right now is one of existential opportunity. And I want to put it that way, because I believe that we can lead the way in many ways. We do not need to sacrifice good teaching for good research. We have proven that as our institution, that one can be an R1 institution and also be an institution that values greatly the quality of teaching. But what we do have to do is to make certain that we are providing the very best kind of educational opportunity for every one of our students. We no longer have a choice as a faculty member, and I'm one of those that can plead guilty to this. I like to teach. I've always liked to teach courses that I like to teach. Right? You know, and I taught a course 2 years out of my new book, and I thought everyone was going to be interested, and the kids yawned. You know, what we've got to do now is we've got to teach the fundamentals to our students, but we've got to teach also what they want to hear and to be taught, not what we want to teach. And it's that change. it's sort of the same thing when I was, don't mean to talk about old Siwash, but when I was at Vanderbilt, we would have alumni events, but they'd always be in the summer. And I say, well, why don't we have them when the students and the faculty are here? They say, well, because it's more convenient for us. We can no longer run a university for our convenience. We have to run a university for the convenience of everyone that we serve. And I think that is the message that we have to leave here with today. And I think that's an important message for all of us, because I believe in that. It's difficult sometimes because we are really interested in very narrowly defined areas, because that's what we spend our life doing. We have trained ourselves to be narrower and narrower in a world in which broad and complex come together in different ways. So I welcome all of you in this journey we're on together. We will succeed if we follow the admonition that the provost put forward. We will also succeed because all of us want to succeed. There's an intense love affair for this institution. We recently did a poll just to take a look at how the university was performing, and in all of my time, I've never seen people, particularly in the state, so attuned to believing in and wanting the universities to succeed as we have here. So we have all the right tailwinds. We need to make certain that the headwinds are not overwhelming us. I also want to acknowledge, Scott, this is your first time here in this new role. And I want to acknowledge Scott. Scott is a valiant leader. Frankie, welcome. Frankie also, by the way, I want to give Frankie another prop, because she's created this whole program on addiction studies. One of the most growing and popular programs because it is relevant for the times. And that's precisely the kind of program that we should develop. Ashley is here. You're down there. You're down there nodding off. No, just kidding you. Ashley, Ashley, we appreciate you and your leadership and what you've done. So if there are any questions, I'm here to answer any, but I'm appreciate all of you. It's the beginning of a new year. We're basically here in full force, and there's something to be said for that. But we have to understand that we have come out of a very dark time, in which the residual impact of that dark time is something that I think none of us are going to fully understand, particularly the impact on the mental health challenges for our students. So any questions that I can answer for any of you? Seeing or hearing none? Scott, it's your turn. Okay.
Thank you, President Yee. So the next item on our agenda is a brief introduction from our new faculty ombuds, Dr. Christine Schimmel.
He said brief. Was that a signal to me, Scott? Good afternoon. First, let me say thank you to Scott and the Faculty Executive Committee for allowing me to have a few minutes to say greetings and share my excitement about my new role as the WVU Faculty Ombuds person. But having served 2 consecutive terms in the Senate and looking at today's agenda, I will be brief because I know what it's like to sit there. So again, my name is Chris Schimmel. I'm an associate professor in the new School of Counseling and Wellbeing in our newest college. This is my 14th year at WVU. I am born and raised here in West Virginia. I have a very committed and passionate love for this university, as I know all of you do. So I'm extremely excited to be serving you, my fellow faculty members, in this position for this year, hopefully beyond, but I'll take feedback from folks as we go along the way to see if you desire to have me serve beyond the first year. I just wanted to share briefly, according to the International Ombuds Association, the primary duties of an organizational ombuds are to work with individuals and groups in an organization to explore and assist them in determining options to help resolve conflicts, problematic issues or concerns, and to bring systemic concerns to the attention of the organization for resolution. So the way I boil this down to you as the way I see my role is, number one, I listen and remain neutral. I don't take sides, and I don't dictate to a visitor to the ombuds office what they should or should not do to try to resolve a conflict. I'm there to support, listen with the utmost level of confidentiality, encourage visitors to explore creative approaches to solving their own problems while keeping all information confidential, surface issues to appropriate resolution channels on behalf of visitors to the office when a visitor cannot or does not feel comfortable doing such, and identify new issues and opportunities for systemic change within the organization. I believe this is a great place to work. That doesn't mean that we can't look and examine policies or practices that need to improve. And so that is part of the role that I see in the ombuds. What is my job? What does it not include? It does not include participating in formal investigations or playing any role in a formal issue to resolve a problem. It does not involve serving in any other organizational role that would compromise the neutrality of the ombuds role. I served since 2016 as the associate department chair in my department. I've stepped away from that. My goal is to be totally neutral for folks who want to come visit the office. It is not to make binding decisions or mandate policies, and it is not to create or maintain records or reports for the organization. That is the appropriate role of a organizational ombuds person. So in a nutshell, I'm here to serve you. I'm here to serve the faculty, provide a safe space in which visitors can share conflicts with which they're dealing and work creatively to find an approach to possible resolution that feels comfortable to you. I'm sure that I will have a lot to learn as I navigate this. I've never been an ombuds before. My husband said, "What does an ombuds do?" the day I was offered the job. And I said, "I don't know. Ask me in a month." So I'm not sure, but I'm learning. But I'm sure I'll have much more to learn. But I will say that you deserve a high quality ombuds person, and I'm committed to doing training and receiving mentorship to improve my service in the ombuds office. I think my background in counseling will serve me well. I received a degree in counseling from WVU in the mid-90s. I know, it's hard to believe that I got a degree in the mid-90s. But was that you that laughed, Provost Reed? Okay. But I have been a licensed professional counselor here in West Virginia for 23 years. I served 13 years on the West Virginia Board of Examiners in counseling, the Chapter 30 regulatory board that oversees the practice of counseling in the state of West Virginia. So I've dealt with difficult conflict before and trying to help licensed professional counselors navigate those issues. My approach to counseling is strength-based. And I'm focused on, in my counseling life, I work with clients, we focus on finding solutions. And so I hope to bring that to the practice of the ombuds. To contact me, feel free to call the office at 304-293-6338, or there is a designated email at faculty_ombudsperson@mail.wvu.edu. And finally, I'll say we're also been in some discussions, and I'm interested in hearing from you if you have any ideas. I think that the Office of the Ombuds can probably expand to begin to provide some training or workshops across the university to units on productive conflict resolution, how to have difficult conversations. And I would be interested, drop me an email, send me a voicemail. I'm interested in your thoughts or ideas on what something like that might look like. So Scott, thank you. Frankie, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and have a great rest of your meeting. I was brief.
Thank you, Chris. Next item on our agenda is a report from General Counsel Stephanie Taylor.
Hi, everybody. How are you doing this afternoon? Good. Okay. Hi. So I'm Stephanie Taylor. I'm the general counsel here at the university. It's nice to see you all in person, as the provost said. So I'm going to talk briefly about two topics. I'm going to go through them fairly quickly, but happy to answer any questions along the way or at the end. So first of all, I was asked just to talk a little bit about some process with Title IX investigations, and then also what we call Rule 1.6 investigations. So as you might know, we have Rule 1.6 is our Board of Governors. Rule 1.6, that is essentially our anti-discrimination, anti-harassment policy at the university. So just really quickly, prior to 2020, the Title IX investigators, or the Rule 1.6 investigators, were housed in our DEI office. And then code of conduct and HR investigations were done in employee relations. And then general student code of conduct investigations were housed in student conduct. But we did change that in the fall of 2020. We tried to streamline this to add some efficiency so we wouldn't have to have joint investigations or multiple investigators, particular cases. So we moved our Title IX investigators to internal investigators. They are now housed in employee relations and the students' rights and responsibilities, formerly student conduct. And DEI is charged with the initial intake, resourcing of our complainants, respondents, and some various compliance reviews. So this is important just to note here because prior to us sort of streamlining this, sometimes if you had a Title IX investigation, it may have aspects of the HR code of conduct or other issues. And so we'd have to have multiple investigations, multiple investigators. Now these investigators look at the issue holistically and can cover any of the particular issues. So just really quickly, I'm mainly focusing here on employee or faculty and staff issues. I'm not talking much about students. If you have a question about students, ask me afterwards, because I know Scott's trying to move me along here, and I'd be happy to tell you, but there are some differences on the student side versus the employee side. So our employee relations basically has three buckets that they look at. First of all is Title IX. This is very prescribed by federal regs. So this is formal complaints of sexual harassment, which is like quid pro quo. So that is, if you do this sexual favor for me, I will give you a certain grade in your class. Sexual harassment, hostile environment, sexual assault, domestic violence, and stalking. And then again, this jurisdiction is fairly limited. It's on our campus or in a educational program within the United States. It does not apply internationally currently. And then Rule 1.6, like I said, is broader. It includes all of those things in Title IX, but our jurisdiction is a lot broader. So it's anything that occurs on our campus and also includes anything that occurs off campus and would unreasonably interfere with our educational operations or would endanger the health and safety of our university community. And then the third bucket that employee relations looks at is sort of general code of conduct violations, which could be fraud, theft, IT violations, unprofessional behavior. This is our employee relations team. So Sarah Simi is the director. We have an assistant director, and there are 3 investigators there that look at the particular cases. So just really quickly, there are differences between Title IX and Rule 1.6. Title IX, like I said, is very prescribed by federal regulations. It is a lengthy process, and we cannot deviate from those federal regulations. I'll note for this group that the Biden administration has released a new version of the regulations for comment. Given how the federal government moves, I don't anticipate that those will be enacted for probably another year to a year and a half. But they are seeking to undo some of the things that were done in the Trump regulations. So we just swing back and forth between the different administrations here. But the one thing that we try to do really hard at WVU is take a neutral, middle of the road approach so that we're not subject to these swings between administrations when we engage in these cases. Rule 1.6 investigation, that is a WVU process, but it's based on best practices and also dictated by some of the case law or some of the legal provisions here within the state of West Virginia. But the most important thing is that we strive for a thorough, complete, and fair investigation. There are differences in intake, and I kind of talked through them here. But again, Title IX is a little bit more formulaic. You have to have a formal complaint. It has to be signed by the complainant. Rule 1.6, we don't have to have that level of formality. And interesting, as currently required under the current regulations of Title IX, there is a dismissal process. So all cases go to the Title IX coordinator. He has to look to see if the case meets the elements of Title IX. If it doesn't, it can be dismissed as a Title IX case. But that doesn't mean that the university won't look at it as a Rule 1.6 case. So that's very, very confusing for the folks involved in the process because they'll get a dismissal letter and they'll be like, what in the world? And then they'll hear about another investigation. It's an unfortunate, in my opinion, thing from the Trump regulations, but that is what we have to follow. So we try our best to communicate this to the complainant and respondents, but admittedly, it's pretty complicated and it's not that easy to understand. Investigations are essentially the same. We interview folks, we do a detailed investigation, and there are opportunities for informal or agreed upon resolutions along the way, with one exception in Title IX. So if you have a student that is accusing an employee, a faculty or staff member of sexual assault, or misconduct, that cannot be subjected to an agreed upon resolution. That has to go all the way through the process. And then we have report and resolution. So Title IX, again, is a little bit different. There is another opportunity for dismissal. Both sides, you do a detailed report. People get an opportunity to review the report and provide comments. But on the Title IX process, it has to go through a hearing. So that is, a hearing with a neutral adjudicator. Oftentimes there are lawyers involved. People hire them on both sides. And there is a findings and an opinion issued, and there are appeal opportunities. On Rule 1.6, a notice of an outcome is issued, which is a written documentation that says the allegations are substantiated or not substantiated. If they are substantiated and they think discipline should be issued, HR works with the relevant supervisors to determine what is appropriate and consistent across the university. There is no official appeal, but of course you have access to our grievance process. And then all of our investigations, we do undergo a strategic investigation process. So, we think very hard. Who are we going to interview? In what order? What questions do we ask? What documents do we need to get from folks? They prepare summaries of these interviews. Most of the interviews are recorded. They write a report. So it is a sort of lengthy, detailed investigation process. And so I always get asked, why do these take so long? So here's just a quick summary of what these all can range from. So these are ranges, highs and lows. So depending on how complex the investigation is, it can take anywhere, just the investigation point, from about 30 hours to about 150 hours. Now, keep in mind, these are investigators here that work just like you all. They work, they're 37 and a half, 40 hours a week here at the university. They have multiple cases that they have to manage and prioritize. So, they're human like everybody else. They're working as fast as they can, but in order to do a thorough and fair job, it does take a bit of time to do. And then that doesn't include the resolution time, which can take a little bit longer, as you can see here, depending if it is going to have to go to a hearing or just drafting the notice of outcome. Code of conduct, it's a less formal process on the HR side. They do an executive summary and they give it to the supervisor to review. Usually takes about 10 to 15 hours of work. And then of course, people often use our grievance process when they are unhappy with the results of that. So we have been making some changes in our Title IX and Rule 1.6 process, particularly on the employee side. Most of them are focused on process and communication improvements. So I just want to note for you all that we do take both of these incredibly serious here at the university, and we're always looking for opportunities to advance and improve. So we regularly bring in an outside law firm to look through our records, to review our investigations, and give us feedback. Which we then incorporate into our process. Some of the biggest thing that we learned from our most recent evaluation was, again, we need to improve our communication process. As you all know, we can never communicate enough with folks about this particular process. So we're going to try to advance that even further. Working on a frequently asked question about what to expect when an investigation is taking place. We've developed kind of a softer cover letter that attaches the more formal notice of allegations or investigations and other relevant documents. We've always called the complainants, and we're also calling the respondents to check in, see if they need any resourcing here at the university. And then the investigators will be doing bi-monthly check-ins by email just to let you know, hey, the investigation is still going on. Here's the status of the case. Employee relations hired a new assistant director position to manage the day-to-day operations and work through to make sure the cases are moving in a more timely fashion. And then they also launched a new software system, which the students have been using on their side for a long time. But this is a great opportunity for us to track and monitor things in a better way. Okay, so that's part one of my presentation. Before I turn to my next topic, do you all have any questions that I can answer about that? Okay, well, if you have questions at any point in time, you always feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer them. Okay, so Scott also asked me just to talk a little bit briefly about the proposed amendments to BOG Rule 1.6 with our ethics, conflict of interest, and outside consulting rule. So first of all, I just thought I'd talk about where we are in the process. So the first notice of proposed rulemaking was issued by our Board of Governors on June 24th. There was a 30-day comment period. 18 comments were received, as we typically do with any point in time in the rulemaking process. We review all the comments. We try to engage with the commenters as much as possible to further explore their feedback, ask questions, work with them. Sometimes we even send them draft language and ask for their feedback and comments. And Matt's shaking his head because he does this to me all the time for rulemaking. We make multiple, or in this particular case, we made multiple changes in response to the comments received. And then we posted those comments and a revised version of the rule on the rulemaking website on August 30th. Faculty Senate exec had asked us to extend the public comment period on this particular rule, which we agreed to do. And so the Board of Governors proposed a second proposed rulemaking actually on Friday. And the second 30-day public comment period is currently underway. So you can go to the website, you can enter in your comments, review the rule. We again will review all the comments. We'll attempt to engage with the commenters, determine if any additional changes should be made. The comments will be posted on or around November 1st, and then the board will take up approval or not during its November 11th meeting. Okay, so what's the changes? So the purpose of the changes is to add clarity that pursuing an engagement where one is adverse to the state of the university, this is important, in a formal legal proceeding, which is defined in the rule, does not count as part of one's institutional job duties, i.e. a service, et cetera, for promotion and tenure purposes. Rather, this type of activity would fall under the guidelines for outside consulting. So in other words, a faculty member can do these activities, but are in their own time as a private citizen, and you can't use university resources when you're engaging in those activities. So your email, your phone, your computer, et cetera, just the same as any other normal outside consulting that's done here at the institution. So the first round of changes that we've made in response, so there were some concerns about First Amendment. Some folks were concerned that the pre-approval would unconstitutionally restrain faculty's free speech rights. So what we did in response to that was we clarified that the university will not take viewpoint or the content of the position being taken into consideration when reviewing the outside consulting arrangement for approval. And then we also added a deadline in which these types of arrangements have to be approved or not by the university, which is 5 business days. So that's to make sure that you don't sit on it and the opportunity passes by. So just a note on pre-approval, all outside consulting arrangements at the university have to be approved in advance. And that is in accordance with the West Virginia State Ethics Act. So traditional state employees are not permitted to engage in outside employment in the area of expertise for which they are hired by the state. But the good news is there is an exception in the Ethics Act for higher education employees, which is why many of you all engage in all of your outside consulting activities. And in fact, we give space for those of you that are 9-month employees, you have the average of 1 day a week that you can engage in these activities. But in order to fall within the higher education exception of the Ethics Act, it does require that the supervisor of the employee approve the activity in advance. This is why all outside consulting arrangements require pre-approval. When we adopted this approval process back in 2019, we went through a very detailed process. We looked at all of our peers, our regional peers, on how they did their conflict of interest and their outside consulting approval processes. So we're not unique. In fact, we pretty much modeled our processes off of our regional peers and some of our peers in the Big 12. The second round of changes that we made was some folks voiced concerns that they were worried that the rule might impact the good work that we do here at the College of Law through the clinical law program. Certainly not the intent of the rule by any stretch of the imagination. So we just work with some of the law clinic faculty members to craft a section to make sure that that was specifically excluded from the rule. So I tried to put in my PowerPoint like the actual language, but it's a long section. But this is the link where you can actually go and read the rule. And also you can find out, that also links to where you could submit a comment if you would like to do so. But if you have questions, even after we leave here today, about the rule or what it means or what it doesn't mean, just feel free to give me a call or drop me an email and I'd be happy to answer that for you. But I'm here, so any questions that I can answer. Okay, well, then I will exit stage left here. And let you guys get back to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, so the next item on our agenda was meant to be a call for volunteers from Chris Staples in the Provost office. Chris couldn't be here with us today, so I'm going to make that call for volunteers for him. The Provost office is looking for 12 volunteers for the University Promotion and Tenure Advisory Panel, which is a panel that reviews some of the promotion and tenure cases. If you're interested, or if you know colleagues, please reach out to your colleagues and anyone who's interested in volunteering to serve on this important advisory panel. Please contact Chris by email in the Provost office. Anything else you would like to add, Mary Ann? That covered? Really important for faculty to have input into those promotion and tenure decisions. All right, question, yeah. Yes, that's correct. So just to repeat that question, people who are serving on their department or college P&T committees cannot also serve on the advisory panel. Any other questions related to that? So important service. Please get the word out so that we can fill that panel. All right, so our next report is from Melissa Latimer, Associate Provost for Faculty Development and Culture. She was going to be joined by Chris Staples, who again isn't here. I'm going to talk about the P&T guidelines process. Melissa.
Thank you. Some of the things that I'm going to talk about today, the provost already mentioned, but that's okay. It'll be good to hear it a second time just to be sure. So what I want to do is want to update you on terms of what this committee has done to date and what's the process moving forward. Where do you get to engage in the process? How does it work? And what's the timeline? So this work began in fall of 2020. We engaged in a national expert in terms of equity and promotion and tenure guidelines. And she and a colleague conducted an external audit of our P&T document and gave us some recommendations in terms of things that we were doing well and places that could be improved. And she even gave some suggestions, sort of like best case scenarios that we could look at to make changes to our document. This work was at one point passed on to the Recognition and Rewards Committee. It was shared with them. And after they completed their work on the workload guidelines, which is the first part of the work that they did, they began systematically going through the P&T document line by line. It's 29 pages. We were meeting 1 hour a week. And after 2 weeks, we were still on the first paragraph. And I thought to myself, how in the world are we ever going to get through this? But it worked out really well because they were serious about it. And what they were doing, they were calibrating with each other and trying to figure out how detailed were we going to be in actually changing this document. And so 17 representatives from colleges and schools across this university. The list of the names are on the website. You should really thank your colleagues. They were very diligent about this work. When it became clear that we were not going to meet our deadline in December, we doubled our efforts and met 2 and 3 times a week. And so we met that deadline. And then we continued into additional work this past spring. So just want to let you know that, multiple views have occurred and suggestions have been made in terms of potential changes to the document. We started sharing that document in the spring of 2022, summer of 2022 with key portions. The Faculty Advisory Committee, the Faculty Senate Exec, the deans multiple times, General Counsel multiple times. And then based on feedback that we got from these different constituents, if there was a clear pattern in terms of what people were saying or something that was confusing and not clear, we made changes based on the feedback that they gave us. And so we are ready to share these proposed changes with the campus, but we'd like to do it really thoroughly and comprehensively. And so what we've decided to do, instead of just doing a few town halls or open conversations. We'd like to come to every single college, Chris Staples and I, and so that's what we're doing. We're coming to every college and we're doing a presentation. And what we're doing is first explaining, you know, the work that we've done, the timeline and all that. But what were the sort of the principles guiding this review? And then we actually show the current text and then the proposed text to replace it. And we focus on the pieces that we think people might have the most questions on. And so that's what we're doing. If you go to our website, the faculty.wvu.edu, and you look at upcoming events, you can see a list of all those town halls. If you're unable to attend your own for your college, you can come to another one, right? So come at the time and the location. And when the presentation is done, the dean might ask you to leave so they can go on with their faculty meeting. I'm sure you would be happy to leave and not stay. So, you know, go ahead and do that. So we want you to see and hear it multiple times. We want you to be able to ask questions in a variety of formats. We've also done something similar with academic leaders like chairs. We've done that at least 4 times. The first college has actually already occurred. We did B&E the very first week of school. I don't know how we managed that, but we did. And there's a whole series of them coming. So that's what's coming so far. So from August through October, it's approximately 20 town halls, and seems like it might be 21 now because more keep getting added. After we've completed going to all the town halls, we think it's really important to explain the proposed changes and why we are proposing these changes to be or should be made, right? After we finish those town halls and everyone has the same information, we'll release the document to the whole campus. So the goal is to get it done before the Faculty Senate meeting in November. And we'd like to release the document as soon as possible. So I say that to encourage your deans to get those meetings scheduled. We are ready to roll. So if you're seeing that your college is not on the list yet, reach out to them and say you're ready for it. So the goal is to introduce the draft November 7th, the Faculty Senate meeting. That will initiate a 30-day comment period. We decided we would follow essentially like a BOG process for this so that it's pretty extensive. We'll do the same thing that Stephanie just talked about in terms of collecting all the comments, reaching out to commenters and figuring out whether or not we should make a proposed change or not. During the December 5th meeting, the Faculty Senate will vote on adopting the university procedures. The document could actually change from what we have proposed now to what is proposed in December, because we actually do listen to what you say and do make changes. If all of that moves forward, the new university procedures would go live January 1st, 2023. All that means, though, is that if colleges and departments and schools are ready to make changes in their document to line up with the university document, they can do so. It doesn't mean that they're in play in the sense that it affects everybody immediately. So just want to be really clear on that. And what we're hoping is over the spring and summer of 2023, colleges, schools, departments will then align their guidelines and they'll come up to our office for review. So that's the process that we'll be using. And that's the timeline. Does anyone have any questions? I see none. Thank you. Please reach out.
I had one question. It was one.
He's online, I believe.
Yep, I'm online.
I'll show you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering if are you going to visit the campuses, for instance, Bickley campus, or we have to watch those video?
No,
or if you
we're coming to your campus.
you have a schedule, you have a date that you're coming?
I believe we have one of them scheduled. I'm not sure which it is.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Melissa. So the next item on the agenda is my report. I have a couple of brief things to report. The first is that During the August 22nd executive committee meeting, the executive committee acted on behalf of the Senate and adopted a resolution requesting that the Board of Governors delay the vote on Rule 1.4 that Stephanie talked about and seek additional input from the faculty. And the board honored that that request. So when the executive committee acts on behalf of the Senate, we're required to report back that action that we took. So the second item that I'd like to report, we had a very productive meeting with President Gee, Provost Reed, Dr. Fred King, Katie Stores from the Office of Sponsored Programs, Rob Alsop, and Stenya McVicker from Shared Services. And we talked about resolving the backlog of proposals and new award initiations in the Office of Sponsored Programs and some other issues about shared services, some of those processes. A very productive conversation. The Office of Sponsored Programs has had 7 recent people leave the office, so they were short-staffed for a period of time, and making progress on filling those positions and on the backlog of getting grants through the award initiation and management process. They've cleared all of the backlog. All of those have been assigned to a reviewer, all the backlog from August 29th back. So they're making definite progress. There'll be a lot of, you'll start to see the results of their efforts here soon. And they're really working hard on the new research portal, which will bring a lot of those processes into a more efficient process so that things move more quickly through the Office of Sponsored Programs. And the last item that I'll report on, the Faculty Senate is hosting a Red Cross blood drive here in the event center on Thursday, November 3rd from noon to 5 o'clock. And there's a link to sign up if you'd like to donate blood. That link is in the agenda for today's meeting and is also posted on the Faculty Senate webpage. And that's my report. Are there any questions for me? Okay, so seeing none, the next item on our agenda is a report from our Curriculum Committee Chair, Lori Ogden. Lori.
Hi, thank you. I don't have a formal report today. However, we have met twice so far. We met in late August for a successful training session, and we did meet to review courses and programs in early September. Those we'll see in a report for Senate in the October meeting. We are having a couple of workshops that I wanted to mention later this week for faculty who are working on course proposals, new courses, or course changes. All of the information is linked on the Senate website, but just real quick, Thursday's session will be from 3 to 5 in the Mountaineer room, and on Friday from 10 to 12 in the Mineral Resources Building on Evansdale.
Are there any questions for Lori? Thank you, Lori. The next item on the agenda is a report from Lisa DiBartolomeo from the General Education Foundation Committee.
Hi, Lisa DiBartolomeo, Eberly College. We do not have a report today, but I would like to encourage people to keep in mind that the Jeff is open for business. So if you have new courses you would like to propose for the Jeff, the moratorium has been lifted for a couple of years. We'd be happy to see your new proposals.
Thank you, Lisa. The next item on the agenda is a report from Diana Davis, Chair of the Teaching and Assessment Committee.
Good afternoon. We submitted just an update of our summer activities. At the end of last year, we proposed a new student perception of instruction tool and via set it action that was moved to a pilot phase testing. So we have submitted on the attached report. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we have submitted our proposed timeline for finishing that pilot instrument. Due to the lateness of the year, we were unable to get a sufficient, we do have some departments that will be testing the new tool this semester, but we weren't really able to achieve kind of critical mass. So we're going to take a little bit longer than we initially were hoping for to complete that pilot study. The only other item was that we did complete the ESEI comments redaction process at the end of the spring term. And we did receive several requests. And on average, we were able to grant about 4 of those, which were partial redactions of comments that refer to the person's personal life, family, or were just generally inappropriate.
Any questions for Diana? Thank you, Diana. Next item on the agenda is a report from our Chair of the Committee on Committees, Memberships, and Constituencies, Leslie Cottrell. Leslie.
Hello, Leslie Cottrell, School of Medicine. On behalf of the Committees on Committees, we met at the end of last year. And so we had a little bit of a typical shift in some of our, across our committees. You'll see those for approval on Annex 6. If anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Leslie. And the next item agenda is the 2021-2022 annual committee reports. Those are attached as annexes to the agenda. They're available on the Faculty Senate webpage. And if you have any questions about any of those activities, please reach out to the current chair of those committees. And then the next item on our agenda is some renewals of some of the Faculty Senate committees. So a series of resolutions that we're going to vote on to renew those committees. The first one is a resolution to renew the Shared Governance Committee, which up to this point has been a special committee, meaning that it needs to be renewed annually because that committee is doing a lot of important work involved in renewing our faculty constitution. And that's an important mission. We're going to propose to renew that committee as a standing committee, just like the other Senate committees. We'll bundle these resolutions to renew those committees into one single vote. The second one is a resolution to renew the Committee on Collaboration. And that is a committee that meets regularly with members of the Provost team to foster interaction. We can discuss different issues that the Provost office and initiative they're working on, issues that the Faculty Senate is working on. And that meeting is attended by different members of the Provost team based on what topics that we're discussing. That is a special committee and will be renewed again for 1 year. And then the last resolution is a resolution to renew all of the standing Faculty Senate committees. All of those committees must be renewed every 5 years, and this is the last year that those committees are authorized. So we'll vote on those 3 resolutions, which are Annex 11, 12, and 13. Any discussion or questions related to those? All right, so all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand online. You have a count for those, Frankie, online. $15, yeah, 14 or 15. Okay. All right. 15 votes online. Please lower your hands if you're voting online. Any opposed? So those resolutions pass to renew the committees. All right, our next item on the agenda is a report from our faculty representative to state government, Eloise Elliott. Eloise.
Eloise Elliott, College of Applied Human Sciences. I have no report today.
Thank you, Eloise. Next, we'll hear from our Board of Governors representative, Stan Heilman.
All right, so we met this past Thursday and Friday. It was a pretty busy meeting. One of the things we did with the new funding formula from the legislature, it requires that you put certain percentages in assignment to certain metrics. So we approved a rate distribution for those. Received an update on capital projects and their funding. As mentioned earlier, we also got a demonstration of the Morgan chatbot. And then received a foundation report on both fundraising activities as well as the investment portfolio of the university. And as we've talked about a couple of times, we did talk about Board of Governors Rule 1.4 and the fact that it is now going out for another comment period because of the extensive alterations that were made in response to faculty input. And then finally, Ashley and I, along with faculty from West Virginia Tech and Potomac State, gave a faculty update presentation in addition to a couple presentations from Sally Hodder, who runs the Clinical and Translational Science Institute here, and Peter Butler, who's a specialist in landscape architecture. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for Stan? All right, thank you, Stan. Oh, yes. The Committee on Committees. Okay, did you have some approvals, Leslie? Were there committee approvals that we missed?
Annex 6 was for.
All right, Annex 6. All right, so Annex 6 are changes to membership in committees. Are there any questions or discussion about Annex 6? All right, so all those in favor of approving those changes to the committees, please say aye. Our team online. Any opposed? Any opposed, Frankie? So the changes to the committees is approved. Is there any new business?
I apologize. I know everybody thought we were getting out of here really early. Lisa DiBartolomeo, Everly College of Arts and Sciences. Just as a point of information, if you run a study abroad program, there is a change that has occurred that has not been widely communicated, and that is that now all study abroad programs, regardless of the number of students, are required to have 2 chaperones. I understand that this is based on risk management and policy related to that. But unfortunately, since our students pay the cost of a faculty member's travel in an education abroad trip, that means that those costs have now significantly increased. And I was hoping that we could maybe have, I had not seen any public discussion of this change, and I was only informed of it because I'm proposing my own spring break study abroad. I don't think very many people know about this, and I think that if we're going to try to increase the international exposure of our students here on campus and give them international experiences, that this may not be a very helpful change, particularly without having had any input as far as I can tell. Thank you.
Does Amber want to speak about that? Sure.
Hi, I'm Amber Brignoli, Associate Vice President for Global Affairs. This change was actually put in place. We were talking about it before COVID. After consulting with International SOS and our other insurance providers, it is part of our policy now that we will ask, doesn't have to be 2 faculty. I want to make that clear. It needs to be 2 chaperones. So if you are unable to find a faculty member in your department, or you are exceptionally worried about increasing costs, please work with Vanessa Yurgovich and the Ed Abroad staff. I could give you a list right now of 20 student life people that would love to travel on these trips, and they go for free because they're on contract all year. So if you handle the academic part, they will happily, deal with the off-campus stuff, or the off-trip type of issues. We also have funding available to provide scholarships both within the colleges and within our office to help keep the costs lower for students if necessary. And quite frankly, we had several occasions this past year, one in Dubai during the winter session and a couple times this summer, where not related to COVID, a group needed to move on and a student was staying behind. And if there was only one chaperone, that puts that faculty member in a really difficult spot. In another location, in another situation, they were in the same city, but we had two students that were having some severe mental health crises. And the faculty member was 100% dedicated to trying to get those students home safely, while another chaperone was actually running the course. So that's the reason that we went with that decision.
Oh, I completely understand that, Amber. It makes a lot of sense. But it does bring up the question of cost for students, especially first-gen students. And it may be that someone can find some other means of paying for it, but I think it's going to significantly increase the upfront cost. And when students look at the website and they see what it costs, they're just going to say, oh, I can't afford that.
And that's why actually the faculty, I will say salary for these trips is often not the biggest factor of cost for the students, particularly for those spring break trips, since they tend to be only 1 hour. It's the travel component. And as I said, we will, work with the faculty member when they're putting their budget together, see what scholarships or subsidies are available through the college. And again, I want to stress that second chaperone does not have to be a salaried person. It could be a grad student even that wants the experience to run the trip. It can be someone that's on, I have volunteered to run these trips before because I'm on salary, so I don't get extra pay for chaperoning a program.
Right. But in addition to the salary, I'm planning to take a grad student so that she can have the opportunity, but the other students are paying for her airfare and her accommodations and all of those costs.
And you
So
will
it does
also
factor
see,
in.
and sometimes we will also talk with you when you propose a trip about then the minimum number of students on the trip. Because as if a trip runs with fewer students, that increases the cost overall. But we are happy to talk with you and again, work with your colleges, work with your departments on budget options for you.
Are there any other questions or discussion on this issue? Lisa, are you proposing any action at this point? Okay. All right. Any other new business? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.